January? Oop, nope. February? Ew! No way, Jose, yuck. Oh, hello, darling. It's me, everyone's favorite calendar girl, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Now, just in case you thought the only pinups worth hanging on a dungeon wall featured photos of naked women, think again. And get your minds out of the gutter and into your parents' basements where they belong. If you want to know what turns a monster fan's head faster than you could say Linda Blair, just feast your eyes on this Undertaker's dozen of creepy creatures, the Dawn Post calendar masks. Four decades ago, the world of monster masks was revolutionized by Dawn Post Studios. These authentic second skins were both highly prized and highly priced. So expensive that the closest many young horror fans could get to them came courtesy of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. While everyone's favorite monsters graced the front covers, an ad for their favorite monster masks screamed out from the back. But to a monster wannabe with a 25-cent weekly allowance, the astronomical price tag of $34 a head made these coveted creations seem unattainable. Although Dawn Post set up shop in 1939, it was in the early 1960s that his studio made horror history. That was when Post joined forces with young entrepreneur and fellow mask maker Vern Langdon and sculptress extraordinaire Pat Newman.
Those were very happy times that I spent at Dawn Post Studios. Everything that ever came out of there were things that I wanted and of the quality that I wanted. And they were way above the quality of anything else that had ever been offered on the market.
In 1963, Vern and Dawn introduced Hollywood Horrors, a new collection of masks based on the Universal Gang of Ghouls. The movie studio was so pleased with the results that 1 year later, Hollywood Horrors was transformed into Universal Horrors. Dawn himself could never resist the chance to play Dr. Frankenstein, so it was an obvious choice to start the lineup with a replica of the man-made monster. Based on the makeup worn by Glenn Strange, this realistic reproduction was molded from the actual prop used in the fiery climax of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. But it was too tight a fit for most human heads, so the Post crew decided that a bigger monster was a better monster. Next up on the sculpting block came this lurid latex edition of Count Dracula. Bela Lugosi himself would have been thrilled by this lifelike vampire visage. Based on Lon Chaney Jr.'s lycanthrope, this hairy likeness of the Wolfman was soon on the prowl. Although the Universal films were beset with numerous mad doctors, Dawn Post based his design on Boris Karloff's obsessed Dr. Neiman from House of Frankenstein. The Phantom of the Opera could once again haunt the Paris Opera House, or any monster fan's backyard, with this stunning reproduction of Lon Chaney's classic creation. Back in the 1950s, the creature from the Black Lagoon leapt from the screen in glorious 3D, and thanks to this thick rubber mask, the Gill Man could once more be seen in all dimensions. The Post team moved from underwater creatures to underground monsters when they created this creepy denizen of the dirt from the Mole People. For their version of the evil Mr. Hyde, Don and Vern turned once more to horror stalwart Boris Karloff, who played the monstrous alter ego in the comedy Abbott and Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And here's a face only a mummy could love. Karis lives again in this monsterful rendition. Any collector lucky enough to own one of these rare masks today should toast themselves with tana leaves. James Cagney solidified his place in the horror hierarchy when he portrayed Lon Chaney Sr. in the biopic Man of 1,000 Faces. And when it came time to immortalize the bell ringer in latex, Don Post lovingly recreated Cagney's version of everyone's favorite swinger. An odd twist of fate, in the form of a visit by publisher Jim Matthews to the Post studios, forever changed the way fans would refer to these universal horrors.
I wanted 11 by 14 photographs of the masks, portraits in the office. Jim Matthews looked at the things framed and said, "Those are great pictures." And I said, "Well, we're going to do something with them. We're going to use them for our ads in the magazines for the masks." And he said, "But I'd like to do something else with these." I said, "Well, if you're going to do that, why don't you just make a calendar?" And I was kind of joking. And he said, "No, I could do that. I'm a publisher." Well, the cat was out of the bag.
Vern realized he would have to expand Post's creepy cast of characters by 2 monsters in order to fill every month of the calendar. So the mask makers crawled into their crypt and pulled out the Metaluna mutant from this island Earth. Cast from the film's original mold, this bug-eyed alien was produced just for the calendar. But the enormous piece generated so much interest that a mask of smaller proportions was eventually unleashed. The months were rounded out by this fearsome gorilla. Fans would have gone bananas to get their paws on this mask, if it had been available. But it was actually part of Don Post's deluxe gorilla costume, and not sold without its accompanying hide. If our primate pal looks familiar, it's because he was molded off of the same head that ape actor Charlie Gomorrah wore in countless films. Sadly, no copy of this monstrous monkey exists today. Once the calendar was released in 1966, those same famous monsters readers drooled even more. For just under $1, they now had nearly full-size reproductions of Don and Vern's creations, with every harrowing detail now in sharper focus. From that point on, fans everywhere called this infamous lineup the calendar masks. And though they may have crumbled away with age and grown more extinct every day, these masks have lived on in blood-drenched full-color glory, thanks in part to this one-time novelty. However, the story doesn't end here. After Don Post passed away in 1979, the boy who modeled the makeup many years earlier inherited the operation. Don Jr. took his father's place. And in the late 1990s, 35 years after Don Post released the original Universal Horrors, his son embarked on a most audacious project, the recreation of the calendar masks.
There was a lot of baby boomers who really wanted those masks, and I heard the same story, the exact same story from many people, where they said, "I cut lawns, I washed cars in order to save up enough money to buy Universal Studios, Don Post Studios mask." Later on, when they grew up, they told me this story, and they said, "And then, when I was an adult, and when I had the money, you stopped making them, and I was never able to get one." And that's really what inspired me to do it.
I'm very strong on revisionism, except, remember, we revised them in the first place. Those were great Universal makeups. So what Don Jr. was going to do, I was sure, was recreate what we had created, and he did a wonderful job.
Once these limited edition $100 a head monster pieces were revealed, Don Post Studios once again became a mecca for mask lovers. Now, a new generation of monster fans could experience the feeling of getting up close and personal with these skillfully crafted creations. And while it only took 35 years of waiting, that older generation had another chance to own a piece of horror history.
Honestly, I just wanted to be able to give back to people something that they really wanted as a child. Doesn't everybody want that?